Welcome to episode 46 of the What Happens Next podcast, the podcast dedicated to looking at the issues, challenges and opportunities you face when you're thinking about the next chapter of your life. Now, our guest this week is a bit of a financial planning legend because for about a decade, probably more than that now, a decade and a bit, he's been helping people understand more about money on YouTube. It's Pete Matthew, and in this interview, we talk about the work Pete does at Jackson's Wealth, but also the fact that in 2009, he was inspired to start recording videos to help people understand more about money. Now, the work that Pete does at Meaningful Money aligns with his purpose. His dad was a teacher and a pastor, and he loves teaching people about and simplifying complex financial concepts. And Pete's done an amazing job and built a brilliant audience about to help to ensure that they understand more about money. Pete shares amazing, brilliant insights. My favourite being having a framework so that we don't purchase stuff immediately, called the 48-hour rule. Check that one out. It's really worth thinking about. So without further ado, let's move on to Pete's interview. We're on a mission with What Happens Next to help as many people as we can navigate the next chapter of their life. So I need a favour. I'd like you to visit our YouTube channel at What Happens Next Live, and we'll make sure we put a link to the YouTube channel in the comments. Enjoy the videos, like the ones that you get benefit from, but most importantly, please subscribe. We want to help as many people as we can with What Happens Next, and subscribing to our YouTube channel for free is the easiest way you can help us. Good morning and welcome to this episode of What Happens Next Live. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Pete Matthew, and I know we're going to sort of dig into some of the subjects on some of the areas of financial well-being that you'll want to know if you're thinking about what happens next. But before we do that, I want to just mention a couple of things that might be really useful for you to know that we're doing at the What Happens Next, and explain why we're doing this. What Happens Next is a bit of a passion project for me, to be frank, because I had a conversation with a client who came to me to prepare for what happens next. But when we started talking in a lot more depth, realising that he perhaps should have been thinking about some of these subjects a long time ago. And with What Happens Next, we will be talking about financial well-being and what financial independence means to you. But actually, that decision to change your life in a fundamental way, to leave your career, sell your business, involves thinking about life in a bit of a broader sense, looking at the helicopter view, so to speak. So what we do on What Happens Next is focus on not only financial well-being, but looking at other areas of well-being. And we've got loads of expert guests that you can get the knowledge of, learn from, and make sure that you're in a position where you're as prepared as possible just by following our free content. Now, you can find that on YouTube. You can find that at www.whathappensnext.live. I don't know who uses www anymore, to be honest. I don't know why I put that in, but please follow that. And we've got a quiz. And that QR code should be coming up now, right? Shouldn't it? We've got a quiz. And what we've found is for people taking the quiz has been up for about 3 weeks. We've had loads of people take the quiz, and I've had plenty of emails say, you know what, Chris, it's made me think how I love to do more in my community, how happy that made me, and how I've got so busy with work and my career, I've actually liked to include a bit more of that in my life. So thinking about this stuff, take the quiz, it's free to do, takes 5 minutes, but hopefully gives you a real insight into some of the areas that you're really strong at, and some of the areas that you might want to focus on when you're thinking about navigating change in your life. But primarily, we're going to talk today about financial well-being, and I'm joined by my old mate now. I mean, we've known together. I've known Pete for quite a long time. Pete Matthew, how are you, Pete?
I'm really good, mate. Thank you for having me. And we were part of like the original financial services Twitterati, weren't we?
I know. Before Twitter was toxic.
Was it even before? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, that was like 2008, wasn't it? I think that's where we first got to know each other. So we have been doing this a while now.
I was really lucky to find to find a really good community from that, and attend conferences where I was just starting my business and learning from the best. And it was a real, I don't know how you feel about this, but my perception of our communities on social media has changed over the years. But then it felt like a community. And it was a really good opportunity to learn from people and do that. So I absolutely love that. Now, I know about your work and what you do. Tell me a little bit about you for those of our audience who don't.
So my name is Pete. I'm married to Jo. Been married 27 years. Got two girls, Ellie 24 and Kate who's 21. So they're both still at home because of course they are. So they're not off the payroll yet, but that's we're very happy about that. We love having them around.
They do the boomerang thing. Did they go and come back?
Ellie's went to university. Kate hasn't. She stayed home. But so yeah, Ellie did kind of live on her own for a bit with mates. But interesting dynamic now because there's boyfriends on the scene. So I've never had men in my house before. Even my dogs are girls. So so that's a weird dynamic. But so I live in Penzance, in the very far west of Cornwall. My accent is from Yorkshire though, but I met Jo at university. And I knew within a week of meeting her that I would marry her, and secondly, that I would end up moving to the end of the world. But it's a very nice part of the world, obviously. 10 miles from Land's End, beautiful beaches. It's a great place to bring up kids and all that. So, so I mean, that's me. I'm, I love to walk the coastal path. I like to be outside. I do not like to be in or on the sea, though.
Yeah.
Right? So,
it's cold, right?
I like looking at it, but not being in it. So yeah, it's cold and it's unpleasant. Yeah,
we've recently moved to Sea, and I mentioned this on my episode before. And Gazzy said to me, "Chris, it'd be great because we're moving at the right time because the summer's coming, right?
Yeah.
And then we have 3 weeks of rain.
Yeah. It's like 9 months of rain, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like.
But the other thing I wanted to mention is your love of dancing that I didn't know that you told me about before we started the podcast.
Yeah, it's
about that and how that fits into your life, how it makes you happy, how it improves your well-being.
Yeah, well, it's it came about, I'm sort of ashamed to say, from a slightly tipsy director's Christmas do. So I'm CEO of Jackson's Wealth. We're a 21-person practice, financial planning practice. So I'm still an active practicing financial planner, but increasingly my job is running the business now. But two of my colleagues, co-directors, and our wives were having Christmas meal in December 2017. And Annette, Charles's wife, said, we're sort of a few bottles of wine deep now. She just said, "Do you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to do ballroom dancing." And the girls all went, "Oh, yeah, I'd love to do that." And we all just went, "Oh, no." No. The three fellas were just like, absolutely not. And anyway, nothing more was said. But February time, so 6 weeks or so later, Annette texts us all in a WhatsApp group and says, "I found a beginner's ballroom and Latin dancing class.
Right.
Are we in?" So we three fellas, we were all like, "We'll give it a term and we'll see how we get on." Well, we all absolutely fell in love with it. It's such a great, it's a great workout. It's an incredible mental workout. And if you're like me, if I'm going to do anything, I like to do it well.
Yeah.
And so I'm continually obsessing about minute differences of where my weight is and how my feet are pointing and all that sort of stuff. But it's actually a brilliant social thing as well. I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm so obviously, I love my family. They're absolutely everything to me. And work sometimes can be a little bit all-consuming. So to have something which is utterly different from that, and that Jo and I do together, has been fantastic for us. It's been great for us as a couple. Spent an awful lot of money on sort of shiny shoes and stuff like that. Yeah, kit. Yeah, I thought you said something else then, but kit. Yeah, it's a clean show, right? So I thought it's been great for us actually, and we love it still. So weekend after next, after we're filming this, we got a Torquay, which is like the most middle-aged, middle-class thing ever, right? the whole school, dance school, goes and takes over this hotel in Torquay for 3 days. And basically, we all kind of park up and we don't move our cars for the weekend and basically just dance and have the odd drink or two through the weekend. So it's a great weekend. So we enjoy it very much.
And that concept of just doing activities that just fill loads of different buckets. The one that you mentioned earlier on that I just never ever twigged on is we talk about intellectual well-being as part of the What Happens Next project, and just the muscle memory and the mental energy you've got to use to dance. I never really thought of before.
It's not as easy as they make it look on Strictly, believe me.
Although they're probably a bit stricter on Strictly than we thought.
Let's brush over that, shall we?
We'll quickly go over that one. So tell us, we talked about well-being, we talked about you, and I want to understand a little bit more about both Jackson's, you've mentioned it, but also your amazing work on Meaningful Money. So tell us a bit about that.
Cheers. So Jackson's is like in many ways like an archetypal financial planning practice. We actually celebrate our 50th year of incorporation this year, but the company that kind of seeded us has been in Penzance for 100 years. So it's a general insurance broker. So Jackson's is like, it's just part of the fabric here in Penzance. Yeah. So I was fortunate to join Jackson's in 2005 as a self-employed advisor, and then was invited to buy into the company in 2007. So I mortgaged to the hill to do that, but it was the best financial decision and maybe I'll say sort of second best life decision after marrying Joe. So, I have the privilege, we've got 8 advisors here, including me, 13 support staff, and we've got clients that we're on the 4th generation of the family for, we've worked with for 40 years. So that's an incredible privilege. It's a small world down here, right? So if you do things right, people know about it. And if you do things wrong, people know about it. Yeah. So, we've got a good reputation, I think, which we protect very fiercely. I love my work, man, and as I know you do. But back in 2009, I kind of had an itch to kind of expand it or amplify the reach, because I realized by then just what an impact having good financial control, having a financial plan of some kind, the impact that has on people's well-being and sense of self. And I kind of wanted to help more people than I could one-on-one as an advisor. So I read a book called Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk, who's still one of my online heroes. And basically the premise was, look, there's no gatekeepers now. All you have to do is buy a camera, this is before iPhone, just after iPhones, right? So you buy a camera and put it up there, and nobody's going to stop you posting because anybody can do it. And if it's good, people will show up and listen and watch. So I shot hundreds of videos, switched to a podcast. I've done 540 episodes of the podcast, but now it's become, what started as just a bit of fun and a bit of hobby has become a beast. So, 116,000 subscribers on YouTube, closing in on 8 million podcast downloads. It brings in nearly all the business to Jackson's now, which was a very happy side effect. But the thing that makes me most happy is the emails that I get every day saying, 6 months ago, I had 20 grand worth of credit card debt, and now I've cleared it and I'm about to start, building my emergency fund or whatever. And I feel like free for the first time ever. So it's basically, I'm absolutely of the mind that anybody can take control of their finances. We just don't teach it. So that's my goal, basically, is to make this information as accessible to as many people as possible.
And we're going to share some of the information today, which I'm grateful for you to come along to do that. But the other interesting thing that you mentioned is that element when people are considering what happens next. And look, I know that not everybody's in this position, and we're lucky enough to be able to do this sort of stuff because we want to help. Yeah. How does that fit into your values and your purpose? And if somebody's thinking about what's next in their life and they don't feel that what they're doing is particularly purposeful at the minute, What potential changes could you make to help somebody think about that? Because you've done that, right? Meaningful Money
Yeah,
is a project full of purpose.
it really is. I'd love to say it was that was intentional, but at the start I was literally messing around with the video camera. It, like, appealed to my love of kit. I mean, you can only see a very little bit, but what I'm surrounded by in here, I've got lights and microphones and everything, all designed to make content production as easy as possible. But I love technology and always have done, and I love learning new software and learning how to edit video and create graphics, all that sort of stuff. So it was just a hobby to start with, but I think perhaps the turning point was about 18 months in, where I had an email out of the blue from a client who had very narrowly avoided being ripped off by an advisor. Right. They're like down in Bexhill-on-Sea, like, I mean, it's 350 miles from here. So, and they just basically said, look, we've watched several of your videos. We feel like we know you and can trust you. Will you work with us? And they became the first client that I ever worked with remotely, entirely because of Meaningful Money.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is having a bit of an impact here. And, you know, that email eventually became just this sort of fire hose of inquiries and emails and communication that I get from people who have taken in the content. To answer your question, though, it fits into my kind of sense of purpose and just the way I'm wired. My dad was a teacher, and then he was a pastor of a church. So I was sort of raised in an environment of service and giving and selflessness. I don't want to sound, you know, it's a bit nauseating really, but I actually do really like helping people. I love to teach, and I love putting things in such a way that people just get it.
Yeah.
And maybe they've battled with, you know, not understanding something for ages, and then you know, the light goes on behind their eyes, and they're like, oh, that's okay, I know what to do now, right? And so simplifying and making the financial services system is an impenetrable mystery to most people, but actually it's not that complicated, not for the vast majority of us. So I love kind of cutting through all the unnecessary stuff.
All the noise. I like that.
So it fits me because you know, it turns out this is what I'm good at. But I sometimes think you don't find that out until a bit later in life, right?
Like one of the important points you make, and it's in one of my favourite books. So I've been doing loads of research for the What Happens Next project. I'm reading loads of books about this stuff. And there's one book that I love called Design Your Life by Bill Burnett. His 17-minute TED Talk is brilliant.
Yeah.
And he talks about the importance of experimentation, low-cost experimentation, and play, and how that can snowball into projects that you really love. Yeah. And actually, if you look at the inception of Meaningful Money, as you say, it came from that. I'll give this a go. What have I got to lose? There's no gatekeepers. We'll try something, right?
Exactly. I spent £100. I'm looking at the original camera. It's sort of on a shelf in there.
Is it in a frame there? Is it in one of those perspex boxes?
It probably should be, because I think it's starting to like disintegrate. But it's about the size of a packet of fags. It's a flip video camera. It's got a little inbuilt USB stick. It's an amazing little bit of kit, and that cost me like £110, I think. Whereas now the camera that I use is about $6,500. So and now it has, and now I'm pretty deep into it. But it's become the thing it's sort of my defining legacy, really. So I don't.
We need to get onto the topic of talking about financial well-being and cover off those things. One question I'm going to ask before we talk about that: what's the most expensive piece of kit you've bought for dancing?
That'd be shoes. Well, not madly expensive, but expensive enough. So that'd be there'd be about £150 for a really, really nice pair of dance shoes. Okay. I mean, I don't practice in those.
They're for
best.
They're for best, yeah.
My Sunday dance shoes.
To be honest, I got cycling a couple of years ago, and I've got shoes for my bike, which always feels a bit bizarre. Yeah. And they're probably around that price. So let's talk about financial well-being. What does it mean to you? What is that concept of financial well-being mean to you?
For me, it's getting money out of the way. right? So money, my perception is that money for a lot of people is a limiting factor, and often their immediate response to maybe an idea pops into their head, something they'd like to do, something they'd like to buy, something they'd like to give to and support. And the immediate limiting factor that comes into the mind is, well, actually, I can't really afford that. Now, that might be true, right? It might be that to buy that thing, to give that money, to do that experience might actually be financially impossible at that point. And so I'm not saying that we should just kind of ignore money, and because obviously it has implications, and depending on where we're at, it can be a greater or lesser limiting factor. But I do think that for a lot of people, it's the perception of money that is the problem, because most people, I believe, feel like they're clinging on to their finances and they're only just have really any kind of control. The money kind of has an insidious mind of its own and it just disappears and all that sort of stuff. So there's a certain irony in that by taking control of your finances, it actually removes it as an obstacle very often. And you can be much more intentional about what you choose to do because you know where your finances are at. So for me, financial well-being is having freedom to make choices, how I spend my time and money. But that's not about having more of it necessarily, but it's having the control and the understanding of how to wield money. Money is just a tool, right? It's never an end in itself. It's there to support life and your goals and your family and all the stuff that's important to you. But it's never an end in itself. But too many people, I think, pursue it as an end in itself, or think that more of it will be the answer to all their issues. Well, I mean, it's been comprehensively proven that more money does not equal more well-being. Right. So, I mean, so it's, most of us think, I'll feel better if. And very often we go through life like that.
I mean, all the evidence points to the well-being from money comes from the lack of worry, right? And
totally.
Taking control of your financial affairs then starts to remove that money. So to start that journey, what's the first step?
Yeah, I mean, the first step, I think, no matter how much or how little of it you've got, no matter how old you are, no matter your family situation or whatever, the first step is control over spending. I believe that all financial planning starts and ends with understanding what's coming in and what's going out.
It's a budget plan. Yeah.
It's a budget, right? Because nobody likes that word. So, I mean, people talk about spending plans instead, which I totally get. I just think that's just language, right? Call it what you want. But essentially, a budget is not knowing where your money has gone. It's telling it where to go. And so it's sitting down and saying, I'm getting paid tomorrow. I've got all these bills I need to pay. Oh, I've got my sister's birthday at the end of the month before I get paid again. We're planning a holiday next year. I need to make sure I'm putting some money aside for that so that I don't have to stick it on a credit card. And it's planning where that money goes. Oh, and do you know what? I might want to retire one day. So perhaps I should think about opening an ISA and say, right, okay. And after all that's done, I've got this amount left, which is the day-to-day stuff, food, fuel, entertainment, all that sort of stuff. So I think everything starts and ends. I mean, I've got clients who, by any objective measure, are wealthy, but they spend 10 grand a month, right? And that's fine, but it's only maths that says, okay, that's fine. You're 55 now. You're going to run out. You're going to run out at 75, and you're probably going to live till you're 90. So there's a problem here. You might have 4 houses and 2 million quid, but if you spend 120 grand a year rising by inflation, you're going to run out. And so it's just maths. And so no matter how little or how much, that control over ins and outs is everything. So that is where to start.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that element of financial independence means something completely different to somebody who's spending 120 grand a year, somebody who actually is quite living a meaningful life on 30 and actually understanding what the ideal life is for you is one of the things that you need to consider when you think about the meaning of money in your life. One of the things that was interesting, one of the things that I implement in my own financial plan is just trying to make my life easy. Now, I'm lucky, so are you, that actually we've got people that we can delegate the jobs that we're rubbish at to, but also the mental shortcuts. And you mentioned one in the answer to your last question, which is when you get paid, just compartmentalize some of the money into different parts. And you did an amazing video that I watched as part of the research for this interview about heuristics and mental shortcuts. Can you share a little bit about that and how you think that fits into somebody's plan?
Yeah, I mean, heuristics is a funny word, doesn't it? It doesn't really mean anything to most ordinary people. So I tend to use the word framework primarily. So basically, it's the definition of a heuristic really is anything that kind of serves to help you when you are learning something, discovering something, or decision making and problem solving. Right? So something that helps you. So it's a kind of a crutch to help you make a decision. So I think in terms of finances, these are ways sometimes of pre-thinking your decisions. So
I hope you're enjoying the interview so far. I know that when I conducted the interview, I learned loads. And I always learn loads from listening to people who have expertise in a particular area, so I can share it with you to help you with your What Happens Next journey. Now, currently, I'm writing the What Happens Next book. It's nearly done. I'm still working hard. It's due to be released in 2025. And to be on the waiting list, so you're one of the first people to get access to the book, simply visit whathappensnext.life/book.
You know, if you set a budget, for example, when you got paid, and then 2 weeks into the month, one of your mates says, let's go away for the weekend. And, you know, we're going to go out.
Dancing until key.
Well, you know, that's a bit my plan. But you know what I mean? Let's just say it's a non-spec. Let's just go away for the weekend, or we'll go out for the night or whatever. And it's not in your budget. You've got a decision to make still in the moment, but actually you've done a lot of the pre-thinking because it's not in your budget. And you know that if you go on that weekend away, something else is going to have to give. And so you've kind of done a bit of free thinking. Something like having a rule with yourself that if you're browsing Amazon, leave it in the basket. Whatever you decide to buy, leave it in the basket for 48 hours and see if you still want it and need it, right? It's a simple rule, but it can help just think, well, it brings a little bit of self-discipline, a bit of financial discipline. Never making any big financial decisions on a Friday night when you're a little bit tired, right? Just, I mean, because your sort of reasoning is impaired.
Energy.
It's like, instead I'm going to do that perhaps on a Sunday morning, depending on what Saturday night was like, but perhaps on a Sunday morning with a coffee or an orange juice, and I'm feeling fresh, I'm going to make good decisions then. They're just simple ways that you can kind of give yourself like a banister to lean on, like a handrail on an escalator. So it just gives yourself some support. I think, I mean, my lights went off in my head when you said, you know, it's all about making my own life easy. I mean, I wrote the book on that, man. I want to think as little as possible. You take that to its nth degree, or rather, I want to think about menial things as little as possible to free up space to think about what I think are important things. So, I mean, like Steve Jobs is a textbook example of this. He wore the same jeans and turtleneck top because it was one less decision. Mark Zuckerberg does the same thing. Guys make millions of decisions a day, but he doesn't have to think about what to wear. Because he's only going to wear the same thing every day. So that's potentially a little bit extreme and weird. But, you know, I absolutely pursue simplicity and ease in everything I do because, you know, life is busy enough, right? I don't need to make more complications. So I'm a big believer in that.
And the big one for people's longer term financial future, and one that I use, is my pension contribution comes out, same place, goes up every year. Split between me and my wife, but like we just make sure that it's increased every year, and our job is just to make sure that we can do the increase. You know, that
absolutely right.
And actually, that then just takes and then we know that we're financially independent because we've got those contributions going in.
Absolutely right. Just set a reminder. I talk about this all the time on the podcast and YouTube. Set a reminder. So, you know, whatever you're paying into your pension or your ISA or whatever, set a reminder for 3 months' time and put it up by a tenner a month. Because what tends to happen is and do that until it's a little bit painful, right? And then you can always dial it back a bit. You don't want to, you don't want to sort of go through life in sort of financial pain, but you keep doing that. But what it does is it means you can then forget about it until that reminder shows up on your calendar. And because otherwise, what you tend to find is it's like, oh yeah, I should really put my pension contribution up, and then you never do. You know, and you think you've been doing it 15 years and you're still putting 50 quid a month in, whereas really by now you should be putting 500 quid a month in. Yeah. You just never get around to it. So just make your life easy. Reduce your decision.
Yeah, it's the habit, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I've learned a lot on just starting these What Happens Next projects and interviewing loads of people about well-being and the sort of things we need to think about when we think we're at that crossroads. You've interviewed loads of people on your podcast. What insight came to you that you thought, you know what? That's something that I need to share.
Well, from interviewing other people?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think probably my favourite interview, I've interviewed him twice actually, is a guy called J.L. Collins. So J.L. Collins wrote what I think is still probably the best personal finance book ever written for ordinary people, right? And it's called The Simple Path to Wealth. And then he's done a follow-up recently called Pathfinders, which is basically a load of stories of people who read his first book and then put it into action. And, I think partly because of that conversation, but partly because of the way I'm wired anyway, and we mentioned it earlier, simplifying things, distilling them to their purest form, in order to make your own life easy, I think it's a core skill, particularly in finance. And the whole point, J.L. Collins wrote his first book because he basically worked out his own path to financial independence. He's not a finance guy. And he wanted to sort of let his daughter into the secret, but she was like 18 and totally not interested. And so it kind of to scratch the itch, he started a blog. And then, this is on fairly early days of people blogging, and it just lit up the internet, and it's like millions of views every month. And so then he codified it and put it into a book. Well, now his daughter is, I'm sure, fairly close to achieving financial independence because she's followed his extremely simple rules for investing.
What were the rules?
It's certainly not unique to him. I've heard it put in different forms in lots of ways, and I've even regurgitated it myself, which is spend less than you earn, right? So that's the budgeting thing we talked about. I tend to add in a step about insuring against disaster. Yeah. So basically, you can have all the financial plans and the good intentions, but if the universe throws you a curveball and you get a hideous diagnosis, or you lose your partner or spouse, or you lose your job or whatever, then sometimes life's just rough that way.
Yeah, we can prepare for the best, prepare for the worst.
Totally. So you can insure against, obviously, basically all those things lead to a loss of income in some form, and you can insure against that. And then thirdly is to invest wisely, and it's all the stuff we talk about. So I kind of put them like that. Spend less than you earn, insure against disaster, invest wisely. But J.L. Collins talks about that. David Barker, the Automatic Millionaire, talks about that. It's all the same stuff. When it comes to the investing, I'm a sort of passive index tracking advocate.
Global diversification, all the stuff.
Yeah, diversification, spread it around, keep your costs low, don't pay more tax than you need to. It's all the obvious stuff, but we still don't teach it in school. So, for me, and you mentioned it, doing meaningful money for, life, how long now? Nearly 15 years this year. Has
when you were 12, didn't you?
Singing? Sorry, yeah, right. It's in the corner of my head.
It's still dark. It's just less of it.
And it's really not. I could blame the lighting, but no, it's my head's been this colour since before I was 40. But because week in, week out, I'm creating videos, I am producing podcasts, and I'm talking to clients, and I'm teaching my advisors here. You get really good at distillation, simplifying, and I'll sit and I'm sitting with a client and I'm observing one of my advisors, particularly when they're new. And of course, they're a bit nervous because the boss is in the room. And the client will ask a question, and immediately to my mind comes like the 13-word answer, which I know will just nail it. But of course, the slightly nervous new advisor is sort of wants to show how smart they are and how knowledgeable they are. And so they just give them like this essay on, bond taxation.
Isn't it? Yeah.
This is out of a textbook or an exam paper, and you're just like, the client don't care about any of that. Just give them this answer, and it's like the client goes, "Oh yeah, great, thanks."
Yeah, but I tell you what's interesting. I like that phrase. I can't remember who said it. Is I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead.
Exactly.
And that element of actually distilling all the knowledge and going, "Here's how I deliver it." Yeah, takes experience. So
it does. Takes experience. Takes time.
You've got to learn how to do it. So that's absolutely brilliant. And we're talking about financial well-being today and removing worry and concern from people's lives. What are the concerns that people write into you about the most, and what's the top tips you think people should know to help sort of allay those concerns?
Easily the most common thing I hear is, I've built a career on helping people to help themselves and basically helping people to avoid the need to see somebody like me, financial advisor. Right? And, the great irony and the way the internet works is that now I'm busier than ever as a result. So, but one thing I hear a lot from people who approach us then to work with us, even having consumed all my content, gone through my academy, done their own financial planning, they come to me and say, "We don't know what we don't know." And so there's still this perception that there is some kind of weird complexity or some wrinkle in the personal finance world that might trip them up. So I hear that a lot. I think the biggest cause of anxiety, though, is the unknown. I think that's true. Yeah. It's part of the human condition. But I think that's been especially pertinent recently with the election.
Yeah,
and now, obviously,
emails on it. Yeah.
Do you know what? But what cracks me up is it's very, very smart people don't actually exercise any thought about where they're getting their information from. And so, they'll say, "Well, Labour are going to do this." I'm like, "Really? Where did you hear that?" They say, "Oh, Daily Mail." I'm like, okay, right. If you're going to take information from a right-leaning newspaper about a left-leaning government, there's going to be a disconnect there, right? Yeah. So we need to think about what our sources are and try to be objective. And not just no commentary on the Daily Mail at all, or no commentary on the Labour government at all. But the problem is we need to learn to weigh our sources of information, I think, and really think through whether there's going to be any bias, which there is.
Well, but also there's the element of how information is disseminated. One of the emails I got this week was a lady who, has come to us because she pays us for that second opinion sort of service, and just said, "My sister said she read this on the internet. What do I do about it?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, actually, Well, I take a really stoic approach and say, what can we control? Yes. And if we can't control it, we don't worry about it. Now, exactly right. If Gaz is watching, I get in a lot of trouble in my marriage, Pete, for saying this, because I would say, "Don't worry about anything you can't control." She went, "How do I stop worrying?" I haven't got the answer to that question, to be honest. But in my life, my philosophy and with my clients, it's like, let's focus on the bits that we can actually add value.
Totally. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And through it all, I've just been saying, look, when something gets announced or when we get draft legislation, that's when we start thinking about it. It's Mark Twain who said, "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened." And so we can we can destroy our well-being. We can raise our anxiety levels massively just by worrying about stuff that probably won't happen. Long-term care is a classic in that regard. Yeah. Obviously, it's a big financial commitment if it happens, but the odds of it happening are actually a lot lower than a lot of people think. And certainly the odds of having your entire estate eaten up by care costs are extremely low. Yeah. And so, that's just maths, but most people don't know that because most of the information we hear is, bad news sells, doesn't it? So it's inflammatory, it's anxiety and fear inducing to get people to take action. So I consider myself hopefully a voice of reason and rationality And that's what clients pay us for. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to call you out on that. Yeah.
And you're right. The element of like sort of, you could, like, for a lot of clients, they don't need us. That's the reality of it. But for some clients, what they pay is worth it just to know we're there. And that element is an interesting one. But I love the message of financial empowerment on meaningful money. The fact that you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
What is there such a thing as too late, do you think? Because if you're thinking about what happens next in your life and you don't know whether you're there yet or not, there could be and I'm certainly of this attitude, because I'm very optimistic about the future, but is there an element where you turn around and go, I just don't know what to do because I've probably left it a bit too late? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say it's never too late, because any action taken now it will make your future better. I mean, so it becomes a question of degree. So, I mean, if you have nothing saved and you're 50, you're probably not going to enjoy a 50 grand a year retirement lifestyle. Yeah. Probably not. But, if you're 50 now and you're going to work till 67 and you've got nothing saved, you say, right, I've got 17 years to make my post-work life better. And actually, you could do a lot of good. You could double your retirement income in that period by being careful, being really intentional about paying into pensions and stuff like that. So you'll have your state pension, but you could, in 17 years, you can make a big difference.
Right? Yeah, you've got time.
Yeah, so it probably won't be this glorious, living on a yacht lifestyle, but most of us have a pretty good sense of what's reasonable anyway. But it will certainly be better than if you continue to do nothing. So I get asked that quite a bit, actually. Is it too late? I've been divorced. I've had to start from scratch. Is it even worth paying into a pension at 60 years old? And the answer is always emphatically yes. Yeah. This is free money. You've got to pay it in tax anyway, so you might as well get it put into your pension. Then it's yours to spend, and all this sort of stuff. So, I tend to get quite sort of evangelical about that. It's just like, it's never too late to make something of a difference to your future.
And actually, starting planning today as you say, means that maybe the plan to stop at 55 isn't going to be achievable.
No,
but you're going to do a whole lot of helping of your future self if you start making moves today.
And the great thing about finance is that it's age agnostic, right? I mean, if you're at 40 years old and you think, right, I'm going to be an Olympic diver, it's probably not going to happen because you're going to get beaten by a 20-year-old, right? So there are certain things that age does go against us, and it's usually the physical stuff. But money is age agnostic. So, if you've left it to your 50s, probably the odds are that you're in a slightly better financial situation than you were, or you'll certainly be earning more than you were in
income.
20.
Yeah.
Probably. And so maybe it's time to just say, okay, I'm going to live a little bit more for tomorrow and a little bit less for today, just so that if I get to tomorrow, it's going to be a bit brighter. So,
one topic I've been thinking about quite a lot is planning for, like, thinking about how we spend our money if we're over that what happens next period, and we're sort of we may be working, but it may be part time, or maybe thinking about sort of different balances in our lives, and how you think about both lifespan and a health span, because we've talked about the fact that we might be in a situation where we might live until 90, hopefully longer, but the physical element of what we can do might be a bit sort of different, because we might stop at 60 and have a good 15 or 20 years. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I had a conversation with my dad. My dad's 76 now. And he's now at a point where he's said, well, I've done quite a lot. And I don't want to sort of go on I don't want to do that stuff anymore. So when you're thinking about supporting clients, sharing information on meaningful money, and having these conversations with your clients, how do you consider lifespan and health span and the difference between the two in terms of building plans?
Yeah, good question. I tend to, as a matter of course, and this might seem counterintuitive for a financial planner who basically spends his life in the future, trying to help people think about their future. But I would always, without any hesitation, say that if you have to make a choice between living today or putting money aside for tomorrow. The answer is always to live for today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow might not come, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
it's too childish, I think, to say, well, I'll probably be dead tomorrow.
There's
so
some
spend
nuance
everything now.
there, isn't there?
There's balance for sure. Yeah. So, I mean, only a child will say, well, I might not be here tomorrow, so I'm just going to blow everything today and let tomorrow look after itself. You know, as we get to our 40s, 50s, and 60s, and even beyond, it's like, okay, I've done all right so far. Maybe I've got quite a few more years left, and you know, as we sort of live longer and stuff. So I always suggest that people focus in the near term. And when it comes to kind of like retirement spending, define retirement however you want, right? But basically, when we're kind of post-career, maybe we're still doing a bit of work, or we're winding down, or we're doing some voluntary work or whatever. But in that post-career phase, I always say to people to front-end load their spending. I don't know about you, but I see far too many people leave too much money on the table because they think they're going to need it later, when what usually happens is exactly what you said. They get to the point where they look around themselves, look, I've got everything I need. Everything I've got is reasonable quality, so it's going to last.
Yeah.
You know, I probably don't need to change my car every 3 years. Or probably if I did it every 7, that would be fine.
Yeah.
I'm a bit knackered to get on a plane and go to South Africa or, you know, the Maldives, but I might still go to Spain once a year. But to be honest, I'm pretty much done with that now. And eventually you do slow down and you're a bit tired and you look around and think, actually, I've got everything I need right here. And for me, the biggest challenge with retired clients is getting them to spend their money.
100%.
And because people don't change, right? Usually the skills that get them to be able to retire don't desert them, and they suddenly start flashing money around.
I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? You know, and I'm one of the things that served me over the past, 10, 15, 20 years is trying to think about habits and sort of having consistent habits in all areas of well-being in my life. But the habits that got them to that point where they've got enough money, they're different.
Yeah, they're different. It's a proper shift.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time talking to clients about that, and it's like, you know, the joy of helping your family while you're alive and can see the benefit of that. And look, we'll help you come up with a figure on that and reassure you that you're not going to jeopardize your future by helping your kids out. Or, you know, actually, you know, maybe it's people, they don't have kids or they don't, you know, not particularly bothered about leaving that kind of legacy. And they say, well, actually, do you know what? I went to the lifeboat house the other day and saw a video and just what incredible work they're doing.
Yeah.
I'm thinking I'd like to maybe help them out in some way. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about some philanthropy then. How would we do that? How could you give to the RNLI or whatever is your cause? And it kind of, like, let's talk about your investments for like 3 minutes and then talk about what's important to you and see what the investments are there to serve. And that's just good financial planning.
To money as a tool to live the life.
Totally. Yeah.
Including it's really interesting. When I started Savello, started the business, when we first met 15 years ago, I was in a stage where I promised Cassie and Charlotte at the time, who was 6, that I'd really make this work. I don't know if I ever told you the story. When I left corporate life, I went home, and Cassie, who worked for a local authority, she used to run Shore Start centres in East London. And I said, I'm starting a business. She went, what are you doing? You've got a good job. You're mad. Don't do it. I thought, well, all right, maybe I won't. But I'll go up and see what Charlotte would say. And I went, Dad's going to start a business. I had some money in the bank and like survived and stuff and all that sort of thing. She burst into tears. And I said, Charlotte, are you okay, darling? She went, Dad, who's going to pay for the holidays now? That was the only thing. So and I did it anyway because I didn't want that what if in my life, and certainly that's been one of the biggest decisions that I've made. But the interesting thing is, as my sort of financial situation's improved, and we're now at a point where the business is doing really well and stuff like that. Actually, I get up every day. I don't think about the money. I think about the positive impact. And it's different how that shifts mentally.
Yeah.
And actually, with a lot of the conversations with clients, that if they know they've got enough, see the positive impact you can have on the world, and that's where philanthropy can fit, right?
Yeah, totally. And I'm exactly the same. Obviously, we're similar age, you and I think. And you get to the point where it's like, okay, I could just do this, and I could run a business in such a way that makes me richer now going forward. But instead, I'm trying to, build something, A, that I'm proud of, B, that serves the team here, and that they end up earning, above average wages, certainly locally. My team are on a 4-day week, which is something that's been revolutionary for us. And actually now my mind is moving towards B Corp and serving the local community. Right. By some measures, this is the 4th poorest district in the country. And yet I deal with people who are millionaires. And that kind of, what I basically want to do is do my own little bit to redistribute the wealth and say, well, the fees that our millionaire clients pay us, some of that we need to be dishing out and making sure that there's financial literacy stuff, debt counseling, and some kind of relief, as well as proper charitable giving coming out of the company, because I can do more with the company than I can as an individual, because there's more money involved. So that's what's lighting me up now in what will probably be the last 10 or so years of my career. So I'm excited by that, and it's a shift, but I couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
No, because you need to go through the work to get to the point where but it's interesting, and I think the fact that we're going through it then gives you an insight into what clients are going through as well, right? Because that element of good. Now, your resources are amazing, and I'd recommend that everybody sort of checks them out. What resources do you get access to that you really love, that's added value, not only to your financial well-being, but well-being more generally?
Let's take financial stuff first. So, I spend far too much time on YouTube. I actually watch normal telly anymore. My absolute favorite finance YouTuber is a guy called Damien Talks Money, Damien Jordan.
Oh, brilliant.
I just think he's astonishingly good and very, very talented. Not only for instance, he did a video recently about, is it smart to invest when markets are at all-time highs? And he kind of drew this analogy with Bulgarian pole vaulter Sergei Bubka, and I just how does your mind work, man, that you thought about that? It's the most amazing video. A guy called Roman Nikisa, who goes on YouTube under the name of Pension Craft, he is, I think, the best commentator on investing in the UK, and he makes it super accessible. I take a bit of credit for him, actually, because I suggested he went onto YouTube. So I met him at a conference in 2017 and suggested he go onto YouTube, and he's absolutely blowing me out of the water on YouTube. He's doing incredibly well, got an amazing business, super bright guy. So those are my two favorites, Damien Talks Money and Pension Craft.
Yeah, Damien Talks Money. It's you talk about that simplification of concepts. That he did one, and I think I watched it, and then about having too much of UK assets in your pension fund, and it was like, right, that's because Jeremy Hunt at the time was thinking about sort of doing thinking about UK ISA, and he just, the way that he communicated that was so clear.
Yeah, he's super gifted and a lovely, lovely guy. Become sort of mates with, I never met him yet, but become sort of mates with him, and he quite often picks my brains for what that's worth, and me vice versa, because he's caning it. He's doing very, very well. Yeah. There's a couple of other people I like. A guy called The Frugal Spender, Brian Mitchell. He's really good on Instagram. I've got a friend called livingPete, whose primary audience is women. She goes by Mrs. Mummy Penny. I quite like her too. One of my faves on YouTube is a guy called Ali Abdal. He's a bit of a phenomenon, 5-6 million subscribers. Everything from well-being to productivity to tech. I get a lot of kind of personal pleasure and sense of well-being from reading and learning new stuff. All right. And so I'm absolutely addicted to a podcast called The Rest is Politics, one of the biggest podcasts in the UK, but I'm a relatively recent initiate into that. Just starting to read more biography, learn about people. Just read Keir Starmer's biography, which is a fascinating insight, actually, by a guy called Tom, somebody or other, I can't remember. So I love to kind of expand my mind, really. So I love the Stoic stuff. I think probably the thing that I get a lot of pleasure out of these days is teaching myself to think. And I think this is how we can best serve our kids, is to teach them how to think. The education system still primarily is about teaching them what to think. how to calculate Pythagoras' theorem and, how to be good employees and stuff like that. I really wish we taught mental models, debate, forcing kids to take both positions in an argument and argue for and against both. Just because I think it will go a long way to sort of reducing the polarization of society, which is the thing that perhaps worries me the most. The fact that everybody's got entrenched positions now and they won't move. That worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I it's an interesting one, isn't it? That element of certainty that people seem to have now.
Yeah, without reason. People are really certain about stuff that they have not got a clue about.
It's so true.
Really, it's like they'll put. I called out somebody the other day who put a. I can't remember what it was about, but I won't bring it up. But it was they just threw away this comment, but they put a percentage in it, and it was like, well, 95% of people who are this actually are this, and I'm like, where'd you read that stat? Yeah, and of course, what he'd actually done is made it up. But by putting a percentage on it, and this person, he was actually talking about transgender people, right? Now, this guy never spent a second in the presence of a transgender person, has absolutely no clue what it's like, to grow up in a body that you don't feel is yours. And yet was absolutely certain of his position and was certain about what transgender people are like. And I just said, that's garbage, man. You haven't got a clue what you're talking about.
And to define somebody's identity just on that factor, that is mad, isn't it?
Or their perception.
In terms of, exactly.
You're assigning fact onto somebody else based on your perception of that person without spending a second in their shoes. I just think certainty is really dangerous. I think what we need to understand far more is the insidious nature of confirmation bias. And the fact that, so in other words, we tend to seek out opinions which reinforce the ones we already hold. But of course, these days, social media algorithms just continue to amplify that. And so in order to seek out opposite opinions, you've got to be very intentional about it. But I think that's really good for the soul, really good for the mind, because you start to expand your mind, your worldview. And I just think that's really good for internal peace.
And actually, when I'm sort of thinking about what happens next and what we're doing with the projects, one of the areas that we're going to be showing in the book is the importance of intellectual well-being. And intellectual well-being doesn't happen without an element of challenge. If you've got that confirmation bias and you're just getting stuff, you're not actually doing the thinking. No. You need to actually develop that skill. It's so interesting.
It's the intellectual equivalent of like eating at McDonald's every day. It's empty calories, right? Sometimes you need to try something new that you think you probably won't like. But actually it turns out, whoa, that's really expanded my palate. And the same is true with information and learning. I think we need to be far more intentional. But not just open to it, but intentionally pursue opposing views. I mean, what a difference that would make to the world if we all did that as a matter of course. And what a difference it would make if we taught that to our kids. But I don't think you're ever too old to learn that. I mean, I really have only been thinking this way for maybe the last 5 years. I was raised in the evangelical Christian tradition. And it completely...
I'd imagine.
We're talking there. There was no doubt. And so, but latterly, I've learned to think. And, I've rejected some of that, not all of it, kept the good stuff. And hopefully I'm a better person as a result. I'm certainly a lot more tolerant.
Really interesting. Really interesting. On that note, and on that ending that I loved, but I didn't expect, which is brilliant.
Sorry.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I think we're aligned on that. That, and actually it reverts back to the financial well-being element, because learning more, understanding more, and thinking about money as a tool to live your life as opposed to a means to an end is a brilliant way to think about the world, and something you might not have thought about if you're watching this. So tell us a little bit about where people can find you. I mean, I'm assuming everywhere, but...
Well, if you search Pete Matthew, you'll find me, but the thing to search is Meaningful Money. The website is meaningfulmoney.tv, but basically, search it in YouTube, you'll find it. Search it in your podcast catcher of choice, you'll find it. So Meaningful Money, that's the logo behind me, and you'll find out what we're up to. Lots of stuff going on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, bud. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Cheers, mate. So, just a warm thank you from me to Pete, because Pete did an absolutely brilliant job, as he always does, in explaining really specific concepts to help you understand more about money. But I'd love for you to share. So feel free to share whatever channel you follow us on. What's your number one money saving or wealth building tip that you think everybody should know about? That's it for this week. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you on What's Next soon.